Mom, you guys came here in the 70s and you'd been moving all around. What made you want to stay in Tucson and plant roots?
And so wonderful. Just the air, the quality of life is laid back and gentle. Yeah, I like to watch the javelina eat my plants.
Nancy Guthrie was somebody's mother, somebody's neighbor, the kind of woman who knew your name, remembered your birthday, and made you feel like the most important person in the room. She was not a headline. She was not a case number. She was real. She had a life, a home, a family who loved her, and a front door she has not walked back through in over 70 days. 70 days. No goodbye, no explanation, no closure. Just a woman who was there, and then was not. And her family, the people who shared her table, shared her holidays, shared her last ordinary moments before everything changed, they are still waiting, still hoping, still waking up every single morning inside a nightmare that has no ending yet. But tonight, something has shifted. Not in the official record, not in a press conference, not in a statement from law enforcement. It has shifted in the details. 5 specific, documented, deeply unsettling details that have been sitting inside this case, largely ignored, largely unexamined, largely unspoken, until now. Details that connect a single name to the masked figure at the center of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. That name is Tommaso Cioni, her daughter's husband, the man who sat beside Annie at every public appearance, the man who held her hand in front of the cameras. And tonight, we are going to look at what the cameras did not show. If you have been following the Nancy Guthrie case, you already know how deep this goes. But if this is your first time here, stay close. Because what we are about to cover in the next few minutes is the kind of detail that changes how you see this entire case. Make sure you are subscribed so you never miss an update on this story. And when we are done tonight, I want your honest reaction in the comments, because on a case this unresolved, your eyes matter too. Before we go any further, let us be clear about something. This is not a verdict. This is not a conviction. Tommaso Cioni has not been charged with anything related to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. What we are doing tonight is exactly what serious investigators do every single day. We are looking at the details. We are asking the questions the evidence keeps raising, and we are refusing to look away just because the answers are uncomfortable. These 5 details do not exist in isolation. They form a pattern, and patterns in cases like this are rarely accidents. Detail 1, the timeline that does not sit right. And on the day Nancy Guthrie vanished, the window of her disappearance was narrow, precise. Whoever took her knew something. They knew her routine. They knew her movement. They knew when she would be alone and where. That level of knowledge does not come from a stranger passing through. It comes from proximity. It comes from familiarity. It comes from someone who had been close enough, long enough, to understand exactly how Nancy Guthrie moved through her own life. Now, Tommaso Cioni's publicly known whereabouts during that window have never been fully accounted for in any official statement released to the public. No alibi confirmed on record. No timeline cleared by investigators in any press briefing. That does not make him guilty. Let us be disciplined here. But it does mean that the most basic question any investigator asks in a disappearance case, "Where were you?" has not been answered publicly for the man who married into this family. And that silence has weight. Detail 2. The masked kidnapper and what the description reveals. Witnesses reported a masked individual. That detail alone is chilling enough. But here's what gets overlooked every time this case is discussed. A mask is a choice. It is a deliberate, premeditated choice made by someone who understood they could be recognized. Oh, not by a stranger. Not by someone passing through town who had no connection to the victim. By someone whose face, if seen, would mean something to the people around Nancy Guthrie. Someone whose presence in her orbit would not raise a single alarm until it was too late. On its own, That observation means nothing. But place it next to what we just covered. The timeline, the familiarity, the proximity, and the mask stops being a random detail. It starts being a decision made by someone with something specific to lose. Detail 3. The behavior after. This is the detail with the most documented public foundation, and this is where we have to be the most disciplined, the most careful, and the most precise. In missing persons cases, investigators pay close attention to behavior in the immediate aftermath of a disappearance. Not because grief looks one specific way. It does not. Grief is messy and raw and different for every single person. But investigators are not watching for grief. They are watching for inconsistency. They are watching for the moments where behavior does not match the stated emotion. In the public record following Nancy's disappearance, observers, journalists, and community members documented multiple instances where Tommaso Cioni's public conduct raised questions. Not because he cried too much or too little, but because specific actions, specific statements, and specific choices in the days following Nancy's disappearance created a pattern of inconsistency that has never been publicly explained. We are not saying those inconsistencies prove involvement. We are saying they have not been explained, and in a case with no arrest and no named suspect after 70 days, unexplained inconsistencies do not fade. They compound. Detail 4. The access. This is where the weight of this case starts pressing down in a very specific direction. Nancy Guthrie did not live her life in public. She was not a public figure. She did not have strangers cycling through her home, her schedule, her daily rhythm. Her world was small in the way that good lives often are. Tight, trusted, family-centered, which means that the circle of people who knew enough about her life to plan what happened to her was not large. It was intimate. Tommaso Cioni, as Annie's husband, had a level of access to Nancy's life that only a handful of people on Earth possessed. He knew the family calendar. He knew the routines. He knew the relationships. He knew which doors were open and which were closed. That access on its own does not implicate anyone. Dozens of loving, innocent family members have the same kind of access to the people they love. But when you place that access alongside an unaccounted timeline, a masked perpetrator who clearly knew the victim's movements, and a post-disappearance behavioral record full of questions, the access stops being neutral. It becomes one more piece of a picture that this case has not yet explained away. Detail 5. The question nobody is answering. Of all 5 details, this is the one that stops the conversation cold every time it is raised. In the weeks following Nancy's disappearance, law enforcement's investigative focus, as reported and observed by multiple outlets and community sources, did not stay exclusively on external threats. It did not stay pointed only outward, at strangers, at random actors, at unknown persons of interest from outside the family's world. The investigative energy, according to what has been publicly documented and reported, moved inward, toward the family's immediate circle, toward the people closest to Nancy. And Tommaso Cioni sits inside that circle, not on the edges, not as a distant relative or a vague acquaintance, at the center, as the husband of Nancy's own daughter. Law enforcement has never publicly cleared him. They have never publicly named him. And that space between those two facts, the space between not cleared and not named, is exactly where this case has lived for 70 days. That is the detail nobody is explaining. And until someone does, the question in this video's title is not going away. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. Her family is still waiting. And the answers that should have come weeks ago are still buried somewhere inside this case. If you know anything at all, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Your call could be the one that brings her home. If this video made you stop and think, share it. Yet not for the views, for Nancy, because the more people who know her name, the harder it becomes for the truth to stay hidden. Subscribe if you are not already here, hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think these 5 details point to something investigators already know? Or do you think the connections are still too loose to mean anything? Tell me what you think. Because on day 70, every voice in this conversation still matters.